Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Steve Kinney. I'm an engineer and a producer. Thanks for clicking on this video, which is part 3 in the series on Luna, where we cover everything from the very beginning of your project all the way to export. In this video, we're going to be covering the essential steps during the edit phase of your project. We'll be looking at the tools, how to comp, and even warp edit functions inside of Luna. Now, timestamps are available for this video for your convenience, so feel free to fly around. All I ask is that you like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you liked about the video and let me know that you stopped by. All right, let's jump right into it. Okay, so in the last video, we covered the tracking phase and we laid down a scratch track. And so after the video, I went ahead and I just laid down some basic instrumentation and put down some tracks here, but now we've got to edit those tracks. First, let's take a look at the tools that we have available to us. It's important to note that you're going to want to be in the edit workflow, which you can find in the workflow panel up in the top right hand side. Of course, there's going to be all of the normal tools that you normally would find in your editor or your DAW, such as cut, copy, paste. You're going to have the ability to do your fades, crossfades, consolidate and export clips. Now, one of the things that I really like about Luna is just how efficient it is to work inside of Luna. Just some really quick shortcuts that you're going to want to remember while you're working in Luna. Whenever you're focusing on a track, so say let's focus on this bass track. If you want to make the track larger, press E, and that'll expand the track. If you want to zoom in, T zooms in, R zooms out, and if you want to split a clip, you can go to your split point and everything snaps to the grid. So for example, I can go to quarter note grids and I can make sure that I'm snapping to every quarter note. And then from here, you have your tools across the top. Now there are shortcuts available for these, and one of the shortcuts that you're going to want to remember is Command E. Command E is going to split your clip. From there, now you'll start to see contextual edit tools. So you've got a crossfade tool that you can just drag, or you have your fade tool, and if you go to the top corner of your clip, all you have to do is just click and drag to create your fade. It's pretty cool to be able to work contextually. Outside of that, of course, there are shortcuts. So what I could do is highlight a section and press F for fade. It's easy as that. Alternatively, if I want to delete some of this, all I'd have to do is just highlight what I want to delete, press delete. Super easy to do. Now, it's also worth noting inside of Luna, you don't need to Command C or Command V for copy and paste. You just press C, you just press V. It's always working. So now let's jump back to the track and do some quick editing that I would really do on the fly here. One thing I would definitely do is just delete out some of this dead noise in all of these tracks. And then I would just create some fades, simple fades. Cool. So now I've got all of my tracks edited and faded where I want them to be. Now let's look at cutting and pasting. This is really straightforward. I don't need to cut anything inside of this project or paste anything inside of this project. But I'll just show you a quick example. If I wanted to do that, what I could do is highlight the section that I want to copy and paste, hit C, come to the area where I want to paste it, and press V. Really easy to do. Okay, now let's move on to comping, versions, and warp audio. But before we go any further, if you've made it this far into the video and you're new to the Apollo platform, check out my new Heritage Classics pack. It's available now. All of the sounds in this little quick project are built with those sounds. And it's a great way to get your session up and running really smoothly, really quickly, with over 30 presets in the desktop version and over 60 presets in the rack mount version. It's the best way that you can support the channel if you like the content that I'm producing. It helps me make way more content. I really appreciate any support that you guys throw my way. Okay, back to the video. So real quick, let's take a listen to this track and we'll get a feel for what we're doing with it. Cool, so it's a pretty straightforward, simple track there. Sounds nice, kind of vintage, indie kind of sound there. Now there's a few things that I would do to this during the mixing phase and some effects that I'd like to put on, maybe bust some things. But for now, we got to look at comping and how that works inside of Luna to make sure that we have the right versions selected. So in order to comp, you have to make sure that you use versions. For example, let's take a look at this electric guitar track. So now in this track, towards the end, there's a little performance mistake. So let's take a listen to this in this chorus section. Just right at the end there. Kind of lose track of the string there. So let's see in version 2 if we can listen to that. Now you'll notice that the edits have disappeared, and you'll also notice that it's a completely entirely different track. We want to likely bring these two tracks together at a nice point. So let's listen to the ending of this and see if it's any better. Cool, definitely a lot smoother. So in order to create a comp, what I have to do is add a new version. And in order to add a new version, you just go to your versions panel and hit the plus button. Now one pro tip, again with session management always in the back of your mind, make sure that you rename this. And we're gonna name this comp. So now what we would do is we would go to version 1, and we would find our exit point for this track. And we're gonna have to switch the grid to 1/8 notes. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to highlight everything right here and hit C for copy. Go to our comp and hit V. Now from there, what I'm gonna do is go to version 2, and I'm going to hold Shift and highlight everything the other direction that I want to copy, and hit C, go to our comp track, and then hit V. I'm also going to zoom in here, and I'm just going to do a simple crossfade over a smaller grid as well. There we go. So now if we listen to this, super smooth. And then all we have to do is just make sure that we add this little fade at the end. And our fade from the previous take is already there. So that's how you'd comp in Luna. It's pretty straightforward. It's not as simple as something like Logic, but it's definitely a feature that's built in there. And I'm sure as Luna continues to develop, it's gonna get even easier. Now let's talk about warp audio. First, what is warp audio? Warp algorithms inside of Luna allow you to adjust time-based clips and manipulate the time of a recorded track. So if I have a bass track that's just slightly out of time, I can shift that so it's like hitting right on the grid. Now this kind of feature is in a lot of DAWs, but this is the easiest implementation that I've ever seen. It's also worth noting that in professionally recorded tracks and release tracks, they're always doing this. So let's take a quick look at an example of warp audio and how you would utilize it. So let's look at the bass here. We're looking at an 1/8 note grid, and you can see that at the very start here, it's just a little early, so we could shift that so it's right on the downbeat. Now with bass, I really like to warp bass audio so that it's always really hitting nice and tight on the grid. Keep in mind these decisions are always track dependent, so if your track calls for a looser performance, make sure that you're accounting for that. So if we want to warp this audio, the first thing we have to do is come up here to the clips view and change our view to the warps view. And once I do that, you can see that Luna has already recognized where they think the warp pinpoints should be. So if I zoom a little closer, it's suggesting that there should be a transient right here. So what I would do is, now this particular bass note is actually pretty close on the grid. So let's look at a different example. Now this is a little early here, as well as the one right here. So what we want to do is click to enable, and then what we can do is, since our snap is enabled, all I have to do is just click it and it'll move it right over, right onto the grid. So let's go ahead and edit this, and let's get this one as well. So now let's listen to just the drums and just the bass together in this quick little section here. Now let's listen to it unedited. So it makes a big difference there. Let's add that editing back in. And now from here, we'll just go ahead and go through this whole bass track, make sure that it's all right where we want it to be. All right, cool. So we've got our bass track warped and it's all on the grid the way I like. You can see all the changes I made throughout the intro and verse section and then the chorus section. One quick final thought on warp audio is that if you're working with drums, you're gonna wanna make sure that you group your audio together. This way, whenever you make a warp, you're making the warp to every drum track equally at the same time. Now, once you're finished with your warp audio, one thing that I really like to do is I like to go up here to warps and just go back to clips. Keeps the view simple, clean, and then of course we can minimize this track by pressing E. So now we are ready to go. We've got our bass locked to the grid, we've got our drum performance, and we've got our guitar performance comped. So now that we've covered the essentials of editing inside of Luna, we are now ready for mixing. So be sure to check out part 4 of this series, which is the next video on mixing. If you've liked this video, please be sure to give it a like, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel for more. If you'd like to work with me directly, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at @stevekinney. And if you'd like to support the channel, go check out the Console Classics pack and the Heritage Sessions pack. It's available now, which you can find at my website, thestevekinney.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video.